From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo, and this is From the South. Thousands of Peruvians are continuing their march against corruption in the judiciary. They're also calling for total political reform. Our correspondent has more on the story.
Muchas gracias. En efecto, una masiva movilización.
A massive demonstration happened last night, which went straight to the front pages of the press. Newspapers showed the huge amount of people that attended. Their banners and messages have been trending on social media, with hashtags like Chavarri out, referring to the public prosecutor, Pedro Chavarri. Also, the slogan, "Everyone should leave," made reference to corrupt authorities who should be prosecuted, judged, and jailed if necessary. During the protests, also the chant, "Close the Congress," could be heard. People were expecting public authorities to react, but there has been nothing so far. Pedro Chavarri is still in his position despite the corruption case against him and despite people calling for his resignation. Former Supreme Judge César Inostroza has also immunity and is free without trial. Congress hasn't mentioned these cases or the corruption cases that involves other members of Congress. On the contrary, it has presented a new law to nominate judges. Demonstrations are set to continue.
Thank you, Jaime, for your report. So let's take a closer look now at why people are in the streets in such numbers across the country and what led them down this road.
Peruvians say enough is enough. Even though there is damning evidence against some of the country's highest-ranking judges, some still remain free. Others even continue to work, such as Attorney General Pedro Chavarri. There have been calls for him to step down.
He cannot be a judge and party of the very judicial process. He raises questions about the autonomy of the public ministry by establishing links with the APRA and with Fujimorismo. He has also lied several times.
According to demonstrators, the political system is also fraught with corruption. They are calling on President Vizcarra to shut down Congress.
Because we have seen that the Congress is a mafia. They protect sentenced people.
Too much protection for the corrupt. They are spending taxpayers' hard-earned money, especially all Fujimoristas.
What good are they doing? Laws? Most of them respond to Mr. K. So what laws are going to benefit the poor?
Social organizations, unions, students, and progressive political organizations join protesters in solidarity. They believe only a constituent assembly can put an end to corruption.
It can't be that here Odebrecht and transnational rule and not the government.
Let's close the Congress and start afresh, a new country. They have sold everything to transnationals. It's a shame that we don't have stable jobs. There's no respect for the workers.
Today's demonstration was not limited to the capital. Protesters chanted, "All corrupts go away," as they took their march to other provinces.
Hurricane Isaac seems to have spared the Caribbean despite warnings that it could have caused massive destruction. As a result, state of emergency in Dominica will be lifted at 9 p.m. Thursday instead of noon Friday. Public officers should return to work on Thursday as normal. Teachers and supporting school staff are expected to return to work as normal too. Students get to stay home though. And T1 Bermuda's government has said that its exclusion from the visa renewal waiver with the U.S. is based on its support for Venezuela. The cabinet held a discussion on Wednesday on the United States government's decision to exclude citizens from Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, and St. Vincent from an announced waiver which eliminates the need for citizens to pay in-person visits to the Barbados embassy in order to renew visitor visas. The United States' decision to close down the office of the Palestine Liberation Organization has met international criticism. Our Cairo correspondent Nayera Tardo has more on the reaction of Palestinian officials on this recent decision.
Various Palestinian leaders have ensured that punitive measures will follow the decision, such as the suspension of cooperation over security issues with the United States. Committee member of the aforementioned Palestinian organization, Hanan Ashrawi, will take Washington in front of the International Court of Justice in The Hague for recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. This recognition has violated laws and international resolutions on the issue. Ashrawi also called out Washington for halting donations to the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Middle East. She claims this measure has deprived millions of Palestinians of their right to education, health, and work. UNRWA serves more than 5 million Palestine refugees in Libya, Syria, occupied Jordan, and in the Gaza Strip. Officials consider that these measures violate the right to return of Palestinian people.
Thank you, Nayara, for your information. And protests are taking place in Ecuador's capital, Quito, against President Lenín Moreno's economic policies. It's being organized by supporters of former President Rafael Correa. At least 3,000 protesters marched through the city demanding for better working conditions. Demonstrators have also been angry about the latest Chevron ruling.
Several sectors from fishing workers and political and social organizations and supporters of former President Rafael Correa are marching today against the latest policies of the government and the latest economic measures taken by President Lenín Moreno. They are defending their rights and their needs. They are against all these political and economic measures. They are against also with the latest ruling in favor of Chevron.
And staying in Ecuador, the Attorney General has said that the state is moving ahead with its bid to nullify the Hague's court ruling in favor of Chevron.
Attorney General Íñigo Salvador says the government will seek to have the ruling nullified by a court.
I have asked the Ecuadorian lawyers to consider two actions: the possibility of requesting either an interpretation or an invalidation of the ruling. We have 90 days to make these requests. The interpretation should be resolved in 45 days. However, the nullification process in Dutch courts can take up to 4 years.
La de interpretación deberá resolverse en 45 días.
Amazonian people affected by Chevron and their attorneys also attended the meeting. They are strongly rejecting the Hague court ruling.
Si el Estado pretendiese aplicando.
If the state intends to uphold this ruling, we feel we have no choice but to go to the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. We will not allow the state to prevent us from exercising our rights.
En cualquier otra corte del planeta, no nos queda otra opción que recurrir ante el Sistema Interamericano de Derechos Humanos.
Several authorities criticized this intervention. They feel that the government is failing to defend indigenous communities. In light of this, some analysts say the government could very well seek to nullify the ruling.
Este convenio, dice en el artículo 5,
Article 5 of the Treaty of New York states that one can deny a verdict when it is not in the interest of the public order. Does the treaty signed with the United States not say the ruling can be challenged? Even the Ecuadorian law also allows for the invalidation of a court ruling if it violates the country's constitution.
Incluso la norma interna del Ecuador, la de su momento Código de Procedimiento Civil y luego Código Orgánico General de Procesos.
The indigenous people also have called on the state attorney general and the president to defend national sovereignty, the independence of the judicial system, and to guarantee full validity of the Constitution in the international commercial matters. Denise Herrera, Telesur Quito, Ecuador.
Tens of thousands of Argentinian teachers and students have walked out of classes in Buenos Aires to protest against government education policies. They are demanding for more funding for public education amid a crippling austerity plan. Teachers are also asking for an increase in pay to offset rising inflation. President Mauricio Macri has offered to boost pay by 15%, but teachers have rejected the move.
We are talking about teachers receiving the same wage as in December 2017. But today, the inflation has reached practically to 50%. Our salary hasn't changed at all.
And teachers across the country have joined the action. Our correspondent Edgardo Esteban has more details.
Teachers from all over Argentina are making one of the most important mobilizations in the last few years in the Argentinian capital. They marched from the Ministry of Communication to the Congress to call for the continuation of negotiations of parities at a national level. This has been delayed by the government since last March. They are also defending public schools, which have been neglected by a lack of investment in infrastructure, science, and technology. They demand better school canteens because for children in underprivileged neighborhoods, meals are very important. On Wednesday, a teacher was captured, kidnapped, and threatened, like in the worst periods of the last dictatorship. There's also the case of the municipality of Moreno, where 2 people died in a gas explosion in a public school because of a lack of maintenance. The teachers and demonstrators explicitly reject the neoliberal policies of the government of Mauricio Macri.
And as Edgardo mentioned in that report, a teacher in Argentina was kidnapped and tortured because she organized soup kitchens in the city of Moreno. Corina de Boris had been receiving death threats since last week for her social work. On Wednesday afternoon, she was kidnapped by unknown assailants. A bag was placed over her head and the words "No Soup Kitchens" were carved on her stomach. She had previously protested for better conditions in public schools. The teachers' union has strongly condemned the attack.
At 5 p.m., as she was walking out of school, a car with 3 people inside kidnapped her colleague, Corina de Boris. 2 men attacked her on the sidewalk, hitting her various times and forcing her inside the car. They put a bag over her head and exposed her stomach. Using a sharp instrument, they carved the words "No Soup Kitchens" on her flesh. But even more serious than this, after torturing her, they warned her that the next time she worked in a soup kitchen, it would be at the local cemetery.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Costa Rica is into its 4th day of national strike. Demonstrations continue in the streets as citizens demand a public consultation on the new economic measures. On Wednesday, police broke into the National University, arresting and beating protesting students. Our correspondent, Fernando Francia, has more from San Jose.
Protests erupted on Thursday, taking the national strike into its 4th day. Demonstrators are upset over what they say was excessive force used by police during Wednesday night's protest. Student organizations showed up outside the presidential house hoping to hold talks with the president. They want to know who is responsible for ordering those police attacks on student demonstrators. Many have been wounded, including members of the media, while some demonstrators are detained. This morning, demonstrators poured onto the streets once again to demand answers and an end to violence.
Brazilian right-wing presidential candidate Bolsonaro remains hospitalized while others keep organizing rallies. A statement of the Albert Einstein Hospital in Sao Paulo says Bolsonaro has been moved to intensive care after his latest emergency operation. In the meantime, Ciro Gomes of the Democratic Workers' Party talked to students, while Geraldo Alckmin of the Social Democratic Party of Brazil met vendors in Rio de Janeiro.
it's a center for peace and a center for business, employment, opportunity, and revenue. I am from Sao Paulo, but I love with Rio de Janeiro. We are going to work together to recover Rio de Janeiro.
In Guatemala City, demonstrators are protesting against the excessive police force used during Wednesday's protest. Indigenous communities took to the streets to protest the expulsion of the International Commission Against Impunity. President Morales responded by deploying a 2,000-strong special anti-terrorism unit. Also planned for Wednesday is a students' march in Guatemala City as part of the week of action called by 60 social movements.
My message to President Morales is that time has come to step down. He needs to resign. The people don't want him in power anymore. He doesn't represent us. Enough repression, enough persecution, enough criminalizing of the people. We don't have any money. Our roads are breaking down. The schools are falling apart. The minimum wage is not enough to buy basic goods.
Jimmy Morales has become a puppet of the political class. Congress, the military, and those in the upper class are using him. He is in no position to govern.
We want a country that is for everyone. We don't want corrupt officials to be in charge anymore. They have stolen so much from us. Poverty and malnutrition rates skyrocket, while education rates drop. And yet, Jimmy Morales wants to remain in power. We demand he step down. We do not want him anymore.
The mayor of Puerto Rico has criticized President Donald Trump for disputing the death toll from last year's Hurricane Maria. After the hurricane, Trump had said his administration's response to the catastrophe was unappreciated. Mayor Cruz told Reuters that Trump does not get it and that unfortunately people died because of that. An estimated 3,000 people died in Puerto Rico as a result of the storm, which knocked out power to all 3.4 million residents.
The world has seen, and the majority of the American people have seen, how neglectful he was towards the people of Puerto Rico. If he calls a success or an unsung success 3,000 people dying on his watch, definitely he doesn't know what success is.
In response, U.S. President Donald Trump took to Twitter to reject the death toll once again. He wrote, quote, 3,000 people did not die in the 2 hurricanes that hit Puerto Rico. When I left the island after the storm had hit, they had anywhere from 6 to 18 deaths. He went on to accuse the state's authorities of exaggerating the death count. I'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
Infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deep into the search of files which uncover the Empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. It's the 4th day of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva. Our correspondent, Eduardo Martín, is on the ground and tells us more about the topics of the day.
Saludos desde Ginebra, los debates de esta cuarta jornada de la
During the 4th day of the 39th session of the Human Rights Council of the UN, 2 topics were highlighted: the fight against genocide and the struggle for civil rights. In regards to genocide, the attendance commemorate the 70th anniversary of the Convention for Prevention and Sanction of these kinds of crimes. The countries stated that despite the creation of this convention 70 years ago, these crimes keep being committed. They mentioned the case of Rwanda in the 90s, also the case that took place in Bosnia, and also considered the Rohingyas crisis as a case of genocide. The Cuban representative also denounced the U.S. genocidal practices, happening for almost 60 years, in regards to the blockade applied by the North Americans against the island. One of the members, Fabian Salvioli, asked the Council if they are the right people, at the right time, and at the right place to fight against genocide in the world.
Thank you, Eduardo, for your report. And thousands of workers in West Africa's Benin are protesting against the government's move to limit the right to strike. In September, the parliament passed a bill to limit the amount of days workers can strike to 10 days a year. Members of trade unions have strongly denounced the new law.
It is democracy. It is the safeguarding of freedoms. It is the safeguarding of our achievements as workers, as young people, as women, as craftsmen, as Democrats in general. Our claims cannot be thrown away, cannot be neglected by the government, and we will not be silent.
Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro is in China to discuss political and economic cooperation. Let's hear more on the visit from our correspondent in Beijing.
Just moments ago, President Nicolás Maduro landed in China for a 3-day visit. There, he will be meeting with President Xi Jinping in the Great Palace of the People, the government's headquarters. President Maduro will pay his respect in front of the monument of the people's heroes located at the Tiananmen Square, which is China's political core. He will also visit the mausoleum of Mao Zedong, China's historic leader. Maduro will hold talks with the representatives from different Chinese institutions and companies. Venezuela's head of state was received by China's vice chancellor. President Maduro arrives in China after the successful visit of Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez to the country. She stated that China and Venezuela are two economies with similar development strategies which defend multilateralism and create new markets. Rodriguez also said that both countries look forward to increased bilateral cooperation. China and Venezuela are expected to sign agreements, especially after the creation of the Mixed Cooperation Commission between both countries. That's all we can tell you for now. We'll keep you posted.
Thank you, Saura, for your report. And finally, in Syria, an alert system is in place warning civilians of airstrikes. This as the government prepares for the final offensive to expel rebels from Idlib. The software processes data which calculates a plane's trajectory. It then sends a warning on Facebook, Telegram messages, and tweets. Most importantly, it triggers loud sirens throughout cities in opposition-held Syria, especially where there are hospitals and residential areas. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.
With development